sources say, unnamed sources say, that Craig Robertson, the 75-year-old man in Provo, Utah, was armed at the time of the shooting. What does that mean? Was he pointing a gun at them? Did he have a gun in? I'm armed right now. I'm carrying a gun, but that doesn't mean I'm a threat to you. Was he holding the gun? Or does arm mean that he had a safe full of guns? What does that mean? And if this shooting happened inside, which I'm led to believe it is, but I cannot confirm that because they won't confirm any details. If this shooting happened inside, why exactly was the body moved to the sidewalk outside of the house and then let to sit there for hours? Something's very wrong here. And that's not excusing what Craig Robertson said, apparently, online. Now, one of his friends from church is Travis Lee Clark. He's a Utah Valley University adjunct professor. He is a church friend, knew Craig Robertson quite well. Boy, I hate doing these interviews. Travis, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm grateful that you are willing to come on the air and just tell us what you do know.
Thank you, Glenn. I just wanted people to know the Craig that I knew.
Is Craig? You didn't know anything about his social media postings, right? You didn't follow him there.
No, I did not follow him on social media. I did not see that until later in the day after I knew he was killed.
Okay.
But I knew him. I knew he was political. He often, talked about politics. He was a big Second Amendment supporter. But I had never heard him say anything like that.
And he used a walking stick, so he was not really agile. He was 300 pounds, 5'4", 75 years old. So he was... Go ahead.
He could not get out of a chair without his cane or walking stick. And there were a few times where I had to help him get out of a chair. And he was not a very mobile guy. He lived less than half a block away from the church, and he would drive himself and his son to church just because he really couldn't walk that distance.
If you saw him and you were on an FBI interview, would he be the kind of guy that, if you only know that what he said, I've got a ghillie suit, I'm going to go up into a parking lot and I'm going to stake out the president and I'm going to shoot him with my high-powered rifle. Is he the kind of guy that you would, of course, if the president's coming in, you would go and make sure that he's not in his ghillie suit? But would that be a possibility or laughable if you had seen him and not known him?
It's utterly unbelievable. It's utterly laughable. He was not very mobile. He was not very active. I could not imagine him in a million years getting dressed up in a ghillie suit and taking up some position, as a sniper, in the condition that he was. He was just simply not capable of executing these threats that he made. I can't imagine anybody who knew him or met him for any length of time imagining that he was even physically capable of doing that.
You know some of his neighbors. Do you know, did the shooting happen in the house or outside? Did the FBI move the body?
There. My wife is good friends with the next door neighbor who called us immediately after it happened because she had a 5-year-old in the house and she was very traumatized and was looking for some place that as soon as they let her out of her house, because the whole neighborhood was locked down, as soon as she was able to get out of her house, she wanted a safe place for her and her 5-year-old. So she called my wife, thought that maybe that could happen. And then my wife went over to go check on her and spoke with her. And as near as I can tell, the shooting took place inside the house. They attempted to bash his front door down. That failed. Then they had a vehicle-mounted battering ram that went in through his front window, and then they went into the building. And then that's when shots were fired. And then, for some reason I don't know, his body was taken out. And when my wife went to go check on her friend, who was living right next door with her 5-year-old son, and they were obviously traumatized, his body was still laying out there on the sidewalk under a sheet. And this was around 8:30. So this was, 2 hours after the event supposedly happened. And it was very distressing for my wife.
I bet it was.
That he was just this person that we knew from church, this kind of lovable teddy bear kind of a guy, who didn't seem like a threat to anyone, was just laying out there. She thought it was very disrespectful.
People don't understand the neighborhoods in Utah are different. Usually everybody goes to church, and the church is usually within a walking distance of a couple of blocks. And so families really get to know each other, and children get to know each other. Was he the kind of guy that the children knew in the neighborhood?
I understand that she did everything she could to keep her 5-year-old son from knowing what was going on. Took him down to the basement to protect him, because it was a very scary situation. And
jeez.
And the second she found someone who could, take her kid and get them out of that situation, she did. But they were stuck there while all this was unfolding.
Yeah, I'm wondering how all the other children on the block, if they saw this man that they knew. Did he seem at all crazy to you? Did he seem like the kind of guy that would?
No.
So this was
I spoke to him on Sunday. I just said, "Hi, how you doing?" I meant to ask about his son. I didn't ask about his son. I feel bad about that. He has an adult son who is disabled, blind, that he's the primary caregiver for, and had been up until a few weeks ago. His son had a stroke and is now in his care center. And so I meant to ask about his son, but I didn't, and I regret that. But he seemed fine. He was always good-natured, quick with a joke, could be a little bit curmudgeonly at times. But he was, and I said this in my Twitter post, he was a sweet guy. And I know that sounds crazy considering what everybody's seen, what he's posted on Facebook, but he was. He was a woodworker.
I think there's a monster in each of us that comes out sometimes on social media that you're like, you'd never say that in real life, but you just become a monster because you're on social media and you think you can get away with it.
Yeah, I think he just kind of leaned into his online persona. But anyone who saw him and his condition, and anyone who knew him and his personality, would have just thought, this guy is he's just trolling, and just went over the top in exceedingly bad taste and not very wise, statements. But I can't imagine anybody who knew him thinking that he was, any of that was more than just bluster. And, I think he just went into some dark places and leaned into his online persona and blew it up, because he just simply was incapable of enacting any of the things he said.
Had you ever gone over to his house or know anybody that you had? Did he have guns laying around? Was he sitting next, in his recliner? Did he have a gun sitting there?
No, he always had his gun secured. He had a workshop, and he loved to work on wood and wood projects, and most of the time that's what we talked about. And anyone who needed help, he would do that. But every time, I went over there, he had his guns, and he was a gun collector. He loved his guns and would work on his guns, and do some builds on guns.
Well, here's why I'm asking this. This is why I'm asking this. The FBI said he was armed at the time of the shooting. I don't exactly know what that means. I know if you want to make it look like, he was shooting back, you say he's armed. But I carry a gun. I'm armed right now, but I'm not a danger to anybody unless you are threatening me. I'm wondering, if the police come into the house and he's in bed or he's sitting in his chair, he has a hard time getting up. Is he the kind of guy that had a gun on him all the time, that it was like, whoa, somebody's coming in and he's pointing a gun at the FBI?
I don't know. I don't know, but, you know, he was...
Did he carry a gun that you know
guy.
of? Did he carry a gun all the time?
I don't know. But, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because he talked about concealed carry. But if he did,
okay,
he wasn't flashing it in church. He wasn't, you know... Correct. He wasn't like some of these gun nuts who are flashing their gun and doing everything else. If he did, he was very discreet about it. And it never worried me at all. He was always very conscientious about his guns, about safety of his guns. His guns were in a secure place in his house. And so I can't, you know, I can't imagine. I mean, yeah, he had guns in the house, but I don't know what the situation or how it unfolded. One
last thing. This bothers me that the FBI, who knows that they're supposed to be trained in de-escalation, they knew he was a ward clerk, so he's in part of, you know, what's called the bishopric. He is part of the leadership of the church, and he's known to be a nice guy. If the FBI knows this, they should have gone to the bishop. Is he the kind of guy that the bishop would have gone to and said, "Hey, listen, FBI approached me. They need to talk to you. The president's coming to town. What are you doing? Why are you writing these things? Listen,
sure,
they have a warrant. They have a warrant. Talk to them." Would he have listened to somebody like that?
I think he would have. I think that anyone who had contacted anybody in the church or anybody in the community that he knew or trusted could have gotten a read on him and figured this out. I just can't believe that this required a SWAT team at a dawn raid. You know, it seems a complete overreaction for a man who was very physically limited. And I just can't believe that he got this kind of attention. Seeing the Facebook posts, well, I understand why, but I don't understand why that escalated immediately to a SWAT team. I didn't know that he had been visited by the FBI in March, but I found that out. But I think anybody who had visited him at that time would have looked at him and said, this guy may be a hothead, he may be a crank, but he's not going to be that kind of threat. And I still don't understand why this could not have been handled another way.
We're talking to Travis Lee Clark, who is a friend of Craig Robertson, who was shot and killed by the FBI in a raid of his house. Travis, I can't thank you enough. I know when our producers reached out to you yesterday after seeing your post that it was a horrible day. And this is the worst part of my job, is having to talk to people who are still in shock and still in mourning. And I apologize for that, but I am so grateful that you would share what you knew about him.